Baseless accusations are only allowed when an English witness says them, not a Japanese lawyer. What are you? A print from that detective's infernal cameras. Again! My judicial assistant, Miss Susato Mikotoba, is an extremely intelligent and capable woman, which is why I never had any cause to doubt that she would have considered this scenario and made sure I had the necessary proof before she left the country, ideally. And the necessary proof is this photographic print, counsel? This print shows a scene in the shop moments after the defendant entered the premises. Agreed. And it also shows the accused mercilessly wielding a gun in the direction of the defenseless broker. But more to the point, it pictures the storeroom door in the background. Let me see that print again. I don't believe it. This really is quite remarkable. The door to the storeroom is completely devoid of a peephole of any description. Ugh. Mr. Graydon. You couldn't possibly have witnessed the crime as you claim to have done, because at the time it happened, there was no peephole in the door. Ugh. In other words, your testimony is a catalog of lies. Oh, it was only a pack before. Now it's a whole catalog. Nerg, erg, grog. 1080 no scope. Order. I am satisfied that the defense has substantiated its claim beyond all reasonable doubt. This witness's testimony was entirely fallacious. Do you know what that means? Break out the cattle prods. That's not the only thing we now know beyond all reasonable doubt. My learned friend's assistant's guilt can no longer be denied. The woman tampered with a crime scene. But more importantly... Good Lord, there's more, Lord Van Zeeks? The defense may have established a reprehensible instance of perjury. Is there any other kind? Is there any other kind of perjury other than reprehensible? But that is no proof that this man is the victim's killer. Yes, that's right. What? I was there at the scene, it's true. And I was shot in the arm, it's true, but that's all. Yes, in fact, if you look at the circumstances, I'm the victim here. Oh, please. No! I don't believe this. But they're right. As it stands now, I don't have any definitive proof that he's the culprit. Still, he can't worm his way out of it now. Iris? You know what they say. There's no point in locking, Objection. Which side are the hinges on? Now that I think about it. Which side are the hinges on? Because if they're on this side of the door, the cat can't push the... Or it may... No, it could be magical hinges. There's no point in locking the cat's door after the cat is bolted. Isn't that right, Runo? As Hurley always says, one lie begets another. No, wait. That might have been a line I wrote for him in one of my stories. Well, no matter who said it first, you're right. Mr. Graydon, not only did you give false testimony to the court, but the lies you told make no sense. Make no sense? What do you mean by such a remark? What you said in your testimony reveals that you know something you shouldn't have known. In other words, there is a fundamental inconsistency in your statements. I mean, they want me to point out that he shouldn't have known that there was blood on her coat, but more damning is, how did you get the gun? If he's going to claim that, oh, she shot him with a gun, which I then left the shop with, and there was no peephole.
Objection!
This is provocative talk, counsel. Won't you enlighten the court? Explain this alleged inconsistency. Iris was right. One lie begets another. The inconsistency is revealed by the lies in the witnesses' statements. They show that Mr. Graydon had knowledge of something he shouldn't have known anything about. Namely... Now, I was just about to say bloodstains on the coat, but... No, I'll stick to that. Stick to bloodstains. I was like, it could be the third gun, but no. The bloodstains that were present on Miss Lestrade's coat.
That's right. The victim's blood spattered all over her when she shot him.
But how could you possibly have known that, idiot?
Obviously, because I saw her do it through the peephole in the...
The point is not that you lied in your testimony, Mr. Graydon. It's the nature of the lie you concocted that is so revealing.
You're not making any sense.
Then let me ask you a simple question. How is it, Mr. Graydon, that you knew of the existence of the peephole in the storeroom door?
What? Well, obviously, Ugh. Has the cat got your tongue, witness? Oh, I can make funnies as well.
The peephole in the door was made after the incident occurred, and once I returned to the shop, having failed to catch the two burglars, Scotland Yard's investigators arrived immediately. Since that time, the police have been at Windibanks constantly carrying out their investigation. Isn't that right, Inspector Gregson?
Well, yes, of course. The place is chock full of pawned articles, and my lads have to thoroughly examine them all. So I gave the order to have officers working around the clock in shifts, so we get it all.
And consequently, there's no way that you, Mr. Graydon, could have gained access to the shop. Therefore, you should have known nothing about the peephole in the storeroom door, so the fact that its existence forms the basis of your testimony is completely inexplicable.
Ugh!
And yet, the fact remains that Mr. Graydon did maintain that he witnessed the crime take place through the peephole in the door.
How on earth is that possible?
Could I have a word, please, Lord Van Zeeks? Speak, Inspector. It's just that I really ought to be getting back to the station now to put in my report. There's really nothing more I can add to this testimony, so if it's all the same to you...
Permission denied.
Oh. It's not all the same to me, Inspector. Not at all. You will remain exactly where you are until this trial concludes. Of course, sir. Mr. Graydon. You shouldn't have known about the existence of that peephole. Which can only mean that you must have been informed about it by somebody else.
Ugh!
Objection!
Stop there, my learned friend. You realize, I trust, that the words you just uttered have extremely serious implications. Yes. Falcon, implicate. The defense believes that the details about the case that Mr. Graydon claims to have seen must have been revealed to him by a certain person before his testimony. And, in fact, considering a particular clue we have, there's really only one person that could be. Whoops. What? Is it... What's the evidence? What is the evidence that... It's me! The clue is my attorney's badge. I wish I could see... it won't let me see the court record, because they were like a piece of evidence that we have. The truth is, it can only have been you, Inspector Gregson. Me? You had better have some proof to substantiate such a rash claim, my learned friend. Consider the fact that we have only been aware of Mr. Ashley Graydon's identity for the last few hours. We learnt of it only during the course of the trial today. By accident, because of juror number 5 happening to work with him.
Indeed, preparations for his testimony were made with great urgency during our hour-long recess, while the police executed the subpoena and brought the man here from the communications station.
And until that time, Mr. Graydon would have had no idea, no inkling that he would suddenly be required to appear in court.
Are you suggesting that until such time as he was summoned?
Yes, my lord. Until then, it's reasonable to assume he knew nothing of the peephole. It was only once Mr. Graydon was in the stand that he realized his position, that he would have to defend himself against the accusation that he was the third intruder.
You're suggesting to the court that it was while this trial was in progress that he received the information, so that he could commit perjury in order to save his skin.
Exactly. And the only person with knowledge of the investigation that he had any contact with is you, Inspector Gregson.
This is a bloomin' outrage. Why would I be giving away details of our investigation to this fella, eh? I was summoned to his lordship's chambers during the recess in any case. Had you forgotten that? Quite true. I had a number of questions regarding the events that transpired at the pawnbrokery. Which means...
Have some of Faded Oasis's breaded chicken and chips. That's what he made for dinner.
The first time these two laid eyes on one another was after the proceedings resumed, following the recess. Since then, they've been in full view in the stand, where such illicit discussions couldn't possibly have occurred, except for when they did.
Ag! I've just remembered something, Bruno.
What is it, Iris?
There was one time before, wasn't there? I think it was when Ginny was testifying. Oh yes, now you mention it, when the bailiff was dispatched to retrieve McGilda's music box from the scene of the crime, that's it! It was during that testimony. I remember finding it strange at the time. Mr. Graydon and the inspector seemed to be having some kind of secret discussion. It would have been possible for you to give Mr. Graydon the information he needed then.
You little toe rag! You're making all this up.
Are you calling me a sock, sir?
I'm a respectable Scotland Yard inspector, for crying out loud. Why would I do something like that?
Why would I be giving away confidential details to the likes of this bloke? Admittedly, you wouldn't have had any reason to do something like that for no gain. But perhaps it was part of a deal of some kind. Then it starts to make more sense.
What deal, Counsel?
I wonder if perhaps in exchange for details about the peephole at the crime scene, Mr. Graydon agreed to give a certain something to the inspector.
I'm sure I need not remind the inspector that, if found to be true, striking a deal of any kind with a witness would be considered a gross case of malfeasance. That is, I believe, three-fifths of a perjury. Quite serious. It's becoming clear that jumping in with accusations is this Nipponese student's speciality.
I don't do that.
But with the stakes so high, the prosecution is not prepared to listen to baseless charges.
Oh, is it malfeasance, not malfeasance? I guess I've never heard it spoken aloud.
It is incumbent on the defense now to present evidence in support of this diabolical claim.
Evidence? Just what are you proposing that the inspector demanded of the witness in return? The court must see proof of this alleged deal. If Inspector Gregson really did strike a deal with Mr. Graydon... then logically there's only one thing you could have asked for. That must be it. Bruno, do you think it could be? Yes. It's the missing link that would join all the dots together in this puzzle.
I must press you for an answer now, counsel. What evidence explains the nature of the alleged deal that Inspector Gregson made with the witness?
Well, it's the second disc, but do I have a picture of that? Do I submit the first disc? We don't have the second disc, so I'm gonna submit the first disc.
Take that!
Sounds good. Inspector Gregson. Besides this murder, is it not true that you've been working on another very important case?
What are you getting at now, Sunshine?
Is it possible that this other top secret case is what's alluded to in this newspaper article here? Oh, I wonder if I could have presented that and it would have counted. That's nice of them. The classified secrets being leaked overseas from the Ministry of Justice.
How the bleeding Nora could you...
We discovered, during the course of this trial, the music box deposited at Windibanks by Magnus McGilded. A special music box designed to play 2 discs at once. It would seem very likely now that encoded on the pair of discs that were in McGilded's possession are the leaked classified secrets. So I put it to you, Inspector, that in order to recover the second of the discs containing those secrets, you covertly made a deal with Mr. Grayson in which you exchanged the disc for details of the case.
You little arg!
Usually they are pretty strict. Sometimes they'll make it so that there's 2 things you could have presented, but ordinarily not more than that. They would rather your health bar explode. On the day of the incident, when we met you at Windibanks, you said this.
I'll be taking that whatever it is of McGilded's down to the yard, thank you very much. So hand it over.
No, don't! Don't give it to him. It's mine, that is. Mine.
I'm sorry, miss.
Anything belonging to McGilded has to be taken in as evidence now. Scotland Yard already knew at that time, isn't that right? That Magnus McGilded was involved in the stealing of government secrets.
My orders were, recover the medium used to convey the secrets leaked from the ministry, and do it on the QT, strictly hush-hush. And that explains why, when I presented this disc as evidence to the court, you objected so heavily, I presume. Because you knew that it contained highly confidential information.
Blimey, not likely. I mean, I wasn't that sure of it myself. I realized there was a possibility, that's all.
Inspector, surely you're not saying that in order to acquire the second of these music box discs, you did indeed reveal confidential details of the crime scene to the witness?
How would knowing that a peephole was carved into the door have helped? I don't know. Like, surely knowing less about what was at the crime scene would have been better, right?
To aid and abet this man in giving false testimony?
There's no other way that Mr. Graydon could have known of the existence of the peephole. It's the only explanation. A deal was struck between these 2 men. Noga!
Objection!
If, and I stress, if this sobering assertion turns out to be founded in truth, it would mean that the second disc is, as we speak, here in this very courtroom. Wait, what? In this room? How could you possibly make a claim like that? Because Inspector Gregson is a Scotland Yard detective. What? What's that supposed to mean? As a seasoned policeman, the inspector will have approached this alleged deal with caution. Clearly, he would not have accepted a gentleman's agreement in this matter. No, he would have insisted on having the article agreed upon in the palm of his hand.
Good gracious, then you mean to say that Inspector Gregson already has the item in question in his possession? He has the second disc actually on his person? Yes! Falcon demand! Falcon search!
The defense demands that the inspector is searched at once. Definitely. They could only have struck a deal with each other when Ginny was testifying before, and Gregsy hasn't moved from the witness stand since. My lord, please, order an examination of his personal effects immediately. Well, he's saying that they already swapped the disc. That he... I mean, I guess search everybody. It makes sense.
Well, Inspector?
This young lad wants to tone down his imagination. He's insulted me and my profession quite enough. However, if it'll put this matter to bed and dispel any doubts about my involvement, I'll happily submit to a body search. What? He's going to agree to it? I presume you're aware of the precipice on which you now teeter, my learned student friend. You've made a most serious allegation against Scotland Yard here. If, following the search of the inspector's personal effects, no disc is found, you will be deemed unfit for court service. This trial will end, and my country's government will formally demand of yours that you are severely reprimanded. So, like, what happens to my client, though? Surely you don't punish my client just because I, didn't even do anything wrong. It's silly. This is all very silly. That sounds serious.
Indeed. To have a visiting student make such defamatory remarks about our country's most senior police force is not something... Oh my god, we're getting the Queen involved. Is not something Her Majesty's government will be able to overlook.
You're just threatening Bruno because you're scared.
The accusation is beyond serious. You must be prepared for grave consequences.
It's true. I can't imagine Gregson would have accepted a gentleman's agreement for something so critical. The disc must have physically changed hands, which means the inspector should have it. But somehow, something doesn't feel quite right here.
Very well, Counsel. You know the implications, so let me ask you one final time.
Yes, my lord.
Do you still persist in formally requesting a search of the inspector's personal effects?
Oh, search someone else. Oh, search the Skulkin brother. I guess. Did he pass it off to him? The defense formally demands the search be conducted.
Well,
don't say you weren't warned, but your typical Nipponese stubbornness made well land you in hot water this time. Perhaps the lesson will do you some good. Fair enough. I've got nothing to hide.
Very well, then.
Wait, didn't I say search someone else?
Objection!
Okay, good. The defense demands a search, but not of Inspector Gregson.
What?
No, what's all this? I'm the one you're accusing, aren't I? I thought you wanted to search me. No, Inspector. Not you. Somebody else. What's the meaning of all this? Lost it at last, have you, Sunshine? The court shouldn't have to put up with this nonsense. You're being completely irrational. Who was that? Be quiet, all of you. Oh, it was her. A little girl. Rono's doing what you all told him to do so and having the courage of his convictions, so you should respect that and listen to what he has to say in good faith. Because that's the British way, I guess. I thought the British way was to stand patiently in line and cluck your tongue at people who try to cut.
Well said, young lady. Indeed, this court is in awe of the defense counsel's conviction and eagerly awaits his next words. You what? No, don't be hasty, my lord.
If I'm not mistaken about the things I've seen in court today, I'm fairly sure that I know who has that disc at the moment. There's only one person it can be.
Take that!
Of my lord, Mr. Nash Skulkin.
Well, I never. Blimey.
Me?
Very well then. Bailiff, restrain the witness. Conduct a thorough search of his personal effects. Please, my lord. Inspector? Scotland Yard has to object to the search.
Objection!
Unfortunately for you, Inspector, your objections carry no weight here. Why that one? Because that's the one that he was talking with over on the side during someone else's testimony. In this courtroom, only the prosecution and the defense have the authority to object. But Lord Van Six, I have no idea what forces are in play that might influence your actions. But personally, I have no intention of obstructing the course of this trial.
Ugh. Bailiff, carry out the search.
Now, hold on a mo. I don't know nothing. Nothing about no desk. Cut it out! Ah! Here, my lord, in the witness's pocket, I found this.
Good lord, that's
another music box disc. I don't know nothing about it. Nothing. That is the second music box disc left behind by Magnus McGilded. If we were to put that into the music box and play them both at the same time, critical national secrets would be broadcast to everyone in the courtroom. So let's do it. Is it not, Inspector Gregson, if that's your real name?
Order! Order!
Guns Nash is carrying into the courtroom. Also that, yeah, he's kind of giving it away by being like, no, not the disc.
Mr. Skulkin, what do you have to say for yourself?
Gordon Bennett. I mean, just Gordon Flamin' Bennett. I swear I didn't know nothing about that disc, honest to God.
Counsel, would you please explain exactly what is going on here? The alleged deal that was struck was between this witness and this detective, no?
Without question, my lord.
Then for pity's sake, why on earth was this man in possession of the disc that the inspector traded for information?
Inspector Gregson is a shrewd, calculating man who rarely loses his composure. But at one particular point in this trial, he exhibited some unusual behavior for a brief moment. Oh, that's right, they weren't secretly talking. He was like shaking him. They were getting physical, and so I guess he slipped it into his pocket.
I don't recall. What unusual behavior?
It was, yes, during my cross-examination of Mr. Graydon. Tell me, Mr. Graydon, when you left the pawnbrokery that night, was by any chance with a second disc in your jacket pocket?
I admit to nothing of the sort.
While Mr. Graydon answered my questions, the inspector appeared to have grabbed Nash Skulkin by his coat and was shaking him violently. Yeah, he did and all. Thought me noggin was gonna fall clean off, I did. I was wishing I'd been born as me brother, I was. And what exactly happened to make the detective attack you like that? I ain't got a clue. He just suddenly turned and grabbed me whistle like that, and he started shaking me. Why the blazes didn't you mention the third gun when we had got you down at the station? That's what he said. He had it right down my ear roll, he did. My head's still throbbing now. The way the detective behaved then was extremely out of character, but looking back now, it must have been then that he did it. That was the opportunity Inspector Gregson created for himself in order to hide the disc.
Well, bless my wig, he hid it.
You.
But I'm afraid I failed to comprehend the motive here. If the detective had acquired the disc he was after, why on earth would he then proceed to hide it in another man's pocket? This is a court of law. He could have submitted the item as evidence.
It would appear, my lord, that the inspector was not at liberty to do that.
Why ever not?
As the man himself revealed earlier, his current assignment has some special conditions. My orders were, recover the medium used to convey the secrets leaked from the ministry. Do it on the QT, strictly hush-hush.
Hush-hush, a top-secret assignment, is it?
As far as we are aware, the information stolen comes from confidential government communications. It would seem that if information were to be revealed in court as evidence, it would be problematic. Does that sum up the situation, Inspector? I'm operating under direct orders from the ministry. I'm afraid I'm not at liberty to answer that question. So, realizing there was a chance you may be searched here in court, you took steps to hide the disc you had acquired from the witness.
Does this mean?
He only pretended to attack Mr. Skulkin in order to get close enough to him to slip the second disc into his pocket.
So it was all a pretense.
At least it wasn't a 5 pence, because that would be illegal.
Well now, Inspector Gregson, and you, Mr. Graydon, are you prepared to admit to the accusation made against you of this alleged deal?
Admit to it, yours truly, please. Mr. Graydon! Clearly our Eastern visitor has an uncommonly active imagination. However, there's no proof that I passed the disc to the inspector.
Objection.
But then, how do you explain the reason why you knew about the peephole? I'm under no obligation to explain. What? Yes, I lied in my testimony. That I admit, so sentence me accordingly. Give me 50 electric chairs for my perjury. But that is all I admit. Murder, leaking government secrets, striking a deal with the detective. All of this is the young Eastern man's fancy. I have no idea what any of that is about.
You... what?
Well, what about you then, Inspector Gregson? Do you admit to making a deal with Mr. Graydon in order to acquire the disc? Ladies and gents of the jury, as a Scotland Yard inspector, I will declare this and nothing more. I have acted in the best interest of the country. Whatever I've done, it's been in the name of justice. So, as members of the public of this fine country, I'd like to think that justice will be your guiding light when you're making your decisions.
This is quite a quandary indeed. Rarely have I encountered such extraordinary tumultuousness in the concluding of a trial. Nevertheless, in the absence of any further evidence to be presented, I believe it is time that we put the matter to the jury for their final leadings. Well now, as a fellow servant of Queen and country, I must say I sympathize with the old inspector.
Lutifex! Not Apollo, Justice. He hasn't even been born yet. Yes, he's a dependable man, I'm quite sure. In service, one becomes a good judge of character. Even crossing your eyes doesn't help when it comes to looking at this case. It's all blurred to me.
Well, as a fellow professional, I'd like to put my faith in the detective, really.
Graydon is highly skilled operator. Stop. Currently in presence of idol. Stop. Again?
The detective has very much trust in eyes. More than this, I cannot see.
I don't believe it. These 6 jurors are... They're going to believe Gregson if they declare their decision now. Is Ginny going to be found guilty? If I don't manage to produce some definitive evidence right now, then we're going to lose. Either some proof that Graydon killed Mr. Windibank, or stole those government secrets. Or some evidence to force Gregson into admitting that he struck a deal with the witness. I wonder if there are... if there's more than one correct answer to this. Because that's interesting that they're not telling me which of these 2 conundrums I have the evidence to save, so or to influence. So is it or are we gonna do the sum? I think we're gonna do the summation examination. I'm gonna have to do both.
Well then, counsel, I think it's time I imposed on the jurors to declare their final decisions. No, that is, unless you have some compelling evidence you have thus far not presented to the court.
If I let the judge call on the jurors to announce their leanings, Gina will be found guilty. So there's no choice, Reno. You have to throw some more evidence at them. This is it now. It all comes down to this, the 3rd final one. So he said, and the judge said, unless you present some evidence that you haven't presented yet, which that could be a clue that it's going to be something I've been hanging on to and haven't used. Which there is this manuscript. I don't yet know how this factors into anything. What else? It doesn't feel like there were any other, like, extreme loose ends. So what I could do is I could say, okay, Inspector Grayson, we're going to play the double music box in court, and then like somehow use that to yeah, okay, let's try it. Maybe. Inspector Gregson, there is one final piece of evidence I would like you to see.
What's that then?
If you refuse to acknowledge that you did in fact strike a deal with the witness here today, then you leave us no choice but to examine this piece of evidence thoroughly.
Well, go on.
This is my last chance. It looks like I'm going to have to force his hand here. One final piece of evidence to get this detective to admit to the deal he clearly struck with Grayson. I don't have a second disc, right? So it's got to be the music box.
Take that!
Is that Mr. McGilded's Peculiar Music Box Council?
Yes, with a disc already in place, ready to play. I think perhaps now would be a good time to listen to the sound produced by the music box again. Only this time, with the second disc we've just discovered set in place as well, and a wanted Russian spy on the jury listening, and also a telegraph operator to blurt out what the dots and dashes mean.
Goodness! This disc council?
No, wait!
I can't let you do that.
Why not?
Because it's got nothing to do with this case, that's why.
Objection.
Not true, Inspector. Man, he's a really good lawyer. All you gotta do is if somebody objects, you just say not true at them. The defense has already proposed that the sounds heard by the court earlier from this music box were part of a Morse code message. We know that Morse code comprises of 2 distinct tones. The defense believes that the second disc contains the second tone needed to complete the message, and now we have a chance to confirm that theory.
For crying out loud, Sunshine, we're talking about state secrets here. If you go letting the whole courtroom hear confidential information like that, it's treason.
Then do you admit the charge? That in order to protect those state secrets, you engaged in unlawful dealings with the witness?
You're mad. If you let that secret information out into the public domain, you'll be making an enemy of the entire British government, you idiot.
Objection.
Let's not forget, Inspector, that you, a Scotland Yard officer, leaked confidential case details to a witness. You told him that a door had a hole in it. That's just as bad as treason. That you continue to lie to the court, and all because, by fair means or foul, you're determined to do your duty. Well, by fair means or foul, I'm prepared to do mine. Man, this is the best, Phoenix Alpha moment in the whole series. And it's not even the real Phoenix. I mean, it is, I guess.
Don't you dare.
I will stop at nothing to protect my client. I don't care who I make an enemy of. My lord, if you please, the court must hear the sounds made by that music box.
Come on, Van Zieks, for Pete's sake! Stop him!
Objection.
Inspector, you should know my methods by now. I am a prosecutor. I'm no Scotland Yard puppet. In this courtroom, my duty is to the law, so let me propose a toast to uncovering the truth by fair means or foul.
No! Very well. The defense's stance here and that of the prosecution has been made very clear, I feel. Therefore, in accordance with the defense's request, the court will now listen to this music box. Will now listen as this music box is set in operation once more. This time with the second disc in place, and both discs playing simultaneously.
Oh, listen to that. It's unmistakable now. It's Morse code.
All right. I admit it, whatever you want, but for the love of God, shut that bloomin' box up!
Too late. Now everybody knows that England was secretly communicating to itself that is building a rocket to the moon. They're gonna beat the Americans and the Russians to the moon by 60 years. Let me ask you again then, Inspector Gregson. Did you, or did you not, strike a deal with the witness next to you in the stand, Mr. Ashley Graydon? Don't forget to drink your Ovaltine. Nice. It was the beating of the hideous... Wait, wrong admission. Communicating to the French that they're stinky bastards. It actually spelled out Arsenal 3, Manchester 2. One of those is England, maybe even both.
Specifically, did you furnish the witness with confidential case details in exchange for this music box disc?
Everyone's just been waiting to say what they think the music box was saying. I love it. How great would that have been if, like, you put in the second thing and it's just ding 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 ding.
Did you reveal the existence of the peephole in the pawnbroker storeroom door, Inspector?
I did.
Stop! Stomp! What are you doing, man?
It's all exactly like the young Eastern lawyer said. When the trial resumed after the recess and we were stood here in the stand together, that's when he approached me with the deal.
Shut up, you imbecile! Shut up! You there. You're the detective who turned up at the pawnbrokery the other day, aren't you? I may have something you're looking for, Inspector, with me at this very moment. So how about a trade I suggest you accept? Or information that may make certain individuals uncomfortable will soon become very public indeed.
What was his plan? Like, couldn't he have just said, "Oh, you have the music box disc? Oh, okay, well, frickin' get arrested then, idiot. We're obviously going to search you and take it." Or is it that is Grayson, like, maybe Gregson isn't actually working on a real assignment? Is he part of the spy network? I don't know. I couldn't let that information become public knowledge, not under any circumstances, so I accepted the man's proposal and told him details about the case that should have put him in the clear. The peephole in the storeroom door and the bloodstains on the overcoat. By giving false testimony, this witness intended to have the defendant wrongly accused of murder. Inspector, you knew that, yet you still revealed those details to facilitate the witness's perjury.
I did.
But then it turned out that the peephole had only been made that night after the incident took place. Scotland Yard wasn't aware of that, if I'm perfectly honest. Well, Mr. Graydon, what do you have to say for yourself?
Ugh.
There's nothing and no one left for you to hide behind, and if there was, we have 4 chainsaws that we would use to put a hole in it so we could go through it. You struck a deal with the inspector in order to escape conviction of a very serious crime. Namely this. Perjury! Oh. You are the third intruder who broke into the pawnbrokery on the night in question, and you perpetrated the murder of the proprietor, Mr. Pop Windebank.
Rig, you... Traitor!
Oh! Oh no, his chip! Bailiff, what are you waiting for? I love the idea that the bailiff's sitting there like, technically, until the judge bangs the gavel, I don't have to do anything.
Restrain that man! At once!
That's it then. It's all over. He10 can stream a different game on Thursday. Oh. So wait, who is the... okay, this is Ashley again. Restrain that man in the past. I despised my life growing up in those slums of vile places. I was cursed from birth. Born into poverty. Oh no, wait, this is... hang on. I'm not doing it right. I was cursed from birth. Born into poverty. The son of a penniless artisan. My parents did nothing but quarrel all day. What little money they had was never spent on me. So I set about studying to better myself, to one day escape from that hellhole.
And you eventually became a communications officer. I admire your determination.
But then you decided to try to sell government secrets. Why?
Because NFTs hadn't been invented yet. Isn't it obvious? Because I wanted money. Even now, years later, the nightmares of my life in the slums wake me in the small hours. I wanted to drown them out with more money than anyone who lived in that squalor could ever imagine. I wanted a mansion with 8 windows. Then one day I met him. Mr. Magnus McGilded.
You're a fiend with a queer talent, so you are. I've money to throw your way if you're interested. All you need to do is go along with me little plan now.
I was to steal the ministry's telegraphic message logs, and McGilded would buy them for a handsome sum. As I was responsible for inspections of the ministry's communications office, it was a simple enough task. The lure of the devil's offerings, how easy it is to succumb.
But you must surely have realized the seriousness of the crime you were committing.
And for that reason I took great lengths to ensure my actions were untraceable. By using the music box. My father was a brickmaker, though my mother divorced him when I was still a child.
Yes, Mr. Mason Milverton.
That's right. He was very skilled with his hands. He'd once been a music box maker's apprentice. I imagined his skills would be sufficient to create a machine that could generate Morse code. So I sought out my father again to employ his services. It was the first time I'd seen him since I left the slums 10 years earlier.
Look at you, Ashley. What a fine gent you've become, eh?
He was a different man to the one in my memory, a thin, frail old man. But poverty had never broken him, never corrupted him like it had me. I was sure that he wouldn't help me if I told him the real reason, so I made up a story. I've got some work for you, Father. I need some music box discs made.
Music box discs, eh?
A musician friend of mine has written some music he wants to sell to the public. I've brought the score with me. There are 2, actually.
I'd be delighted, son. It's been 20 years since I did any work like this, though. Fetch my tools, would you? They're in the loft.
That's how I had him make the 2 discs.
Thereby splitting the information in 2. You were taking considerable precautions indeed.
It was...
Aren't there easier ways? You could have just written the dashes on one sheet of paper and written the dots on the other. That would have worked.
It was to protect myself as much as anything. It meant that I could deal with McGilded in 2 separate transactions. The first involved the first of the 2 discs, and the music box for playing them. I exchanged them with McGilded for 10 Didn't we establish that that's not very much money? Then, on receipt of the second disc, he would pay 1,000 guineas. That's a little better. Still, though, government secrets ought to be able to get 1,000,000 pence. So, what happened on the omnibus 2 months ago? A page with lines could be whatever. You could disguise it as a drawing of several cats. Was the second part of the deal? The exchange of the second disc? Yes. I'd showed the man information that way a number of times already, but it seems he became reluctant to part with his money. But that doesn't quite make sense, Mr. Graydon, for why was it that on the omnibus 2 months ago, your father, Mr. Milverton, was the one dealing with McGilded, and not yourself? When I received the 1,000 guineas after my first completed dealings with McGilded, I decided to give 200 to my father for his troubles. But my father realized something was amiss. In time, he worked out that I must be involved in something dubious. And when he did, he said to me, Next time there's an exchange, you'll let your old man do it, understand? Otherwise, I won't take your money anymore. That was my father's way of dealing with it, I suppose. Climb into the omnibus, hand over the second disc, and take the money from McGilded. That's it. He had no idea what was actually on the discs I'd asked him to make. He never knew. Just like I'll never know why everything went so horribly wrong that night. Man, maybe we're not done! Is there gonna be a whole, gigantic epilogue? All I know is that the disc was taken from him, and he never returned home. It was only then that I found out what sort of a monster McGilded really was. So after 10 years of not once uttering it, I swore on my father's name. To exact revenge. Revenge? This calls for a drink. As anyone with even the remotest knowledge of the man will no doubt be able to imagine, McGilded brought all of his wealth and influence to bear in the most despicable of ways. To crush any semblance of justice in his trial. The crime scene was tampered with, evidence was fixed, and witnesses were bribed. How funny would it be? It would never happen because it's too silly. But imagine, most of the Phoenix Wright cases, the prosecutor, well, not most, but some, the prosecutor winds up being, the real murderer. And if they were we suspect him now, and that's the clothing that he was wearing when he wore it, so give us that clothing, we need to test it for blood. And they were like, we can't because there's too much wine on it. And all of the times that he's been pouring the wine and smashing the glass is in order to taint the evidence. And he just got away with it because everyone was just like, oh, okay, you're a Phoenix Wright prosecutor. Of course you're doing something silly every 5 seconds. McGilded should still be alive. So we must still have plot left to go. That trial 2 months ago was a farce from start to finish. My feet had barely touched British soil back then. And I walked into that hornet's nest completely unaware of the sinister background to it all. I'd made plenty of money out of my dealings with McGilded by then, so I spared nothing in my arrangements 2 months ago. I knew exactly who to hire. How did your cane get fixed? Answer me. If you're willing to pay the price, there are people in this city willing to do anything you ask. McGilded himself had shown me that. Are you saying that
I think you have the picture now. After he twisted everything to his favor in this courtroom to ensure that he walked free, I took matters into my own hands and delivered the justice that monster deserved. That tragic accident following the trial here 2 months ago was planned and executed by yours truly. McGilded's death that day was caused by this man. Everything is ready, sir, if you'd like to follow me into the courtroom. What's this, officer? 'Tis sooner than I was led to believe. I hope it's not inconvenient, sir. There were some changes to the schedule. Well, I must be making tracks now. 'Tis time for the inspection. They're going to examine the omnibus again, so I'm told. I asked if I could be present for it myself. You laugh, but we've had Phoenix Wright games where people were named yours truly. No, what was the guy's name? Real name? So that policeman who came to tell McGilded he could examine the omnibus again? That's right, an imposter hired by me. McGilded used his wealth to manipulate the trial. He paid people to adulterate the omnibus with all manner of false evidence. He threatened witnesses to lie in their testimony. So I gave the man a taste of his own medicine. Once the omnibus was doused in paraffin, one of my sham policemen ushered McGilded inside and sent him on a one-way journey to hell. An eye for an eye. That's how I avenged my father's death. A spine-chilling account indeed. But that wasn't the end of it for me. There was a loose end, you say. A loose end? Yes. I should think it's obvious. The second disc, which my father had taken to exchange with McGilded. Okay, maybe McGilded really is dead, so we don't have that much wrap-up.
Ah, yes. There was indeed no mention of it in the man's trial 2 months ago. Clearly because it had been removed from the scene of the crime.
When I realized it was missing, I remembered something. Something from the first time I dealt with McGilded. Why is he admitting? I mean, Phoenix Wright villains always admit to everything once they've had their breakdown. So who is this? Him? This is him telling him. This is the first of the 2 discs, and the music box you need to play them. Well, look at that now. What an ingenious little invention. So then, as promised, 10 guineas for ye, young man. What's this? Winterbank's Pawnbrokery. Aye, 'tis a pawnbroker's ticket, so it is. Ye can use it to redeem an article I've deposited there for ye. There's no need to give a name, just hand over the ticket and tell the fiend the watchword. I've put a jewel in pawn for ye. It'll fetch a good 10 guineas if you sell it, so it will. I've never heard of a pawnbrokery being used in quite that way before. Have ye not, Mr. Graydon? London's pawnbrokeries are very useful places, you know. Each one is like an extremely secure vault. But where are the dashes? We got all the dots. So I knew that if he'd taken steps to hide the disc, it would be in that pawnbrokery somewhere. On the night he killed my father, he must have entrusted the ticket to someone. Yes, to Gina. I remember now that when we first met you at Winterbanks that afternoon 2 days ago, you had a description of Miss Lestrade written down. How did you know who you were looking for? From the trial. That pickpocket's testimony was clearly peculiar. Anyone could see that. I realized immediately that she was another of McGilded's pawns, that he must have threatened her somehow. I was fairly convinced it would be her who had the ticket, so I started to make some enquiries. I had a strong suspicion the girl would come out of the woodwork on the redemption deadline. And he was absolutely right. And yes, sure enough, she did. All I needed was to wait until the girl went to Windibanks to redeem the articles. But unfortunately, she redeemed only McGilded's overcoat, and the one disc that was in its pocket. The all-important music box with the second disc inside was missing, because it had already been forfeited 2 days earlier. But I was unaware of that fact. Had I not been, I could have avoided my nighttime excursion. Meanwhile, as our investigation into the stolen government secrets was progressing, we picked up on the fact that McGilded was involved. Inspector, you've recovered fast. I guess. I mean, he was fine. My orders were to recover the stolen information as quickly as possible, so we started gathering the fellow's possessions and examining whatever we could lay our hands on. We had a full-scale investigation going at the yard, but we had to keep it as quiet as we could. Then, when the inspector came here to take the disc from me in the pawnbrokery that day, I became nervous. I was sure the music box and the second disc was still there in the shop somewhere, so I knew it was a race against time. What was he worried about? I guess he was worried that they would get them and then backtrace the fact that he was involved? But if he had never, done any of this, if he just let them find it, then I don't know. I had to find those articles before the police did. So that's what prompted you to break into the place that same night. With the help of your old friends, the Skulkin brothers. What happened that night in the pawnbrokery I can only describe as a nightmare. While Nash and Ringo were searching the counter, I'd located the music box I'd sold to McGilded on the shelves of forfeited articles. And the second disc was inside? Yes, I slipped it into my pocket with a very deep sigh of relief. But then something entirely unexpected happened. What are you doing in my shop? Bang. He ran out and shouted that and then shot himself in the back. A gunshot rang out in the shop and I felt a sharp pain in my left arm. The broker fired his gun and the bullet pierced your limb. Yes, exactly. But unfortunately, I decided to bring my own gun with me that night, just in case. Before I knew what was happening, I had fired back. The man had already turned to flee. I hadn't intended to fire in his direction, much less kill him, but unfortunately for both of us, the bullet hit home and struck him in the middle of his back as he fled through the storeroom door for refuge. A sorry tale. It all took place in the blink of an eye. I don't imagine Nash and Ringo even realized what had happened at first. I was terrified, so I fled. And that's the whole story. That's everything that happened at Windibanks on that wretched night. I am exhausted from reading. How Gina, after the shot was fired, she closed and locked the door. Earlier, you called McGilded a monster, a man who used his wealth and influence to distort the facts and escape justice for the crime of murder. What tragic irony. For what you have done is exactly the same. You've become the very monster you saw and despised so deeply in McGilded. Yes, I think I have.
Well, this has been a long and exhausting trial. However, it would seem that at last we have arrived at the truth. Inspector Gregson, what of Mr. Ashley Graydon? He's been restrained, my lord, and is being escorted to the yard. He'll be charged with treason. He'll be charged with perjury. And the rest of the charges don't really matter. He'll be charged with the murder of Mr. Windibank and the stealing of government secrets. Very good. And you, Inspector, regrettably, you will have to face charges yourself.
Yes, my lord, of course. It transpires that you were complicit in helping a criminal escape justice. That fact remains whether or not you were doing so in the line of duty. The crime is a serious one, Inspector, and inexcusable.
Now to the defendant, Miss Gina Lestrade.
Oh, yeah?
It's time for the final adjudication. Is the jury ready, Mr. Foreman? Yes, sir. Guard-up squadron standing by, sir. This is really it now. The last push, the final call, finishing whistle. My men are ready to deliver their verdicts. Thank you, Mr. Foreman. Very well. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will now declare your final decisions to the court.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
That's the stuff. I'm off the hook. Finally, Runo, you managed to do it. Finally is the word. I really wasn't sure if we'd come out on top for a while there. Susie was right. You're the best lawyer in the world.
Miss Lestrade, I am not finished with you yet.
Eh? What? What are you looking at me for?
Before you start enjoying your freedom, there are certain other crimes to consider.
Eh?
2 months ago, in my courtroom no less, you gave false testimony, did you not?
Uh-oh. Here it comes. Off with her head.
And in relation to the trial today, not only did you unlawfully enter Windibank's pawnbrokery, you also attempted to abscond with Mr. McGilded's property, it seems.
Eh? I never done nothing of the sort. Of course not. Not like you were gleefully wearing McGilded's coat in your cell yesterday or anything. Just when I was getting excited about throwing a party for Ginny this evening. You're not off the hook either. You defaced a courtroom door.
And turning our attention to the defense, determining that when played together, the music box discs contained a message in Morse code was, well, it was certainly a most unexpected revelation, counsel.
Quite so, my lord. The prosecution was caught entirely off guard. In fact, I think we should applaud my learned friend's courage here today. I propose a toast to demanding that government secrets be disseminated before the entire courtroom. Very sorry about that. It was the only way I could get Inspector Gregson to admit what he'd done. So... Who's this? Susato, did you come back? If I may say something on that point. Isn't that... Oh, it's her. It's, about the sounds produced by the music box before. I do wonder if that was really Morse code at all. What? What are you saying, madam? Oh, well, it's just that I'm really rather fanatical when it comes to Morse code. You don't have to be fanatical. You do it for a job. That automatically means that you can hear... It's like if SERP was like, I'm really fanatical about knowing Japanese. It's like, well, it's your freaking job. So much so... Or no, wait. He translates German to English. He doesn't translate to Japanese. Maybe. Maybe he does. If he feels like it. So much so that the whole world seems to be covered in dots and dashes to me, in fact. I just... I don't even hear the beeps. I just hear blonde, brunette, redhead.
Goodness, madame. An unhealthy...
If it's a freaking... It's a beep and boop language. Don't pick on her. But I must say that in my opinion, the sounds produced by those two discs were nothing more than that. A meaningless series of two different tones. What? Can that really be? It wasn't Morse code after all? My lord, the defense would like to listen to the music box again.
Are you off? You're not? How many times do I have to tell you those discs contain ministerial secrets, sunshine?
This courtroom is not an appropriate forum to discuss the nature of government communications. Okay, it's not a beep and boop language, it's a dit and doot language. Okay. We know McGilded conspired to trade national secrets with our enemies. Secrets acquired from Mr. Graydon. Now that the man has admitted to his crimes, we have no need to pursue the matter further. Ugh. But it's really going to bother me.
Miss Lestrade.
Yeah, me lord?
That which you have seen today here in this courtroom has been extremely disturbing.
Falsified evidence, intimidation, perjury, a grim catalogue of depravity.
An appalling experience to befall any child.
Oh yeah, can we get her tried as a minor? We should have... What kind of lawyer are we? Why didn't we ask that from the beginning? Come on, it ain't nothing I don't see most days back in the slums. In the back slums.
I beg your pardon?
If you weak, you pay for it. It's just how life goes. Gina. But look, I reckon I've worked something out today. The world ain't fair, but if you want it to change, you gotta start with home. You gotta change how you are yourself.
Well, that's a very laudable lesson, I would say. I eagerly look forward to the born-again Miss Lestrade never gracing my courtroom with her presence again. Now, with regard to the murder of Pop Windibank, proprietor of a pawnbrokery business on Baker Street, I hereby declare the defendant, Miss Gina Lestrade, not guilty.
Wee wee wee. The spam sketch. Oh god! She loaded it. Well, she loaded it off screen and then fired it. Grenade launchers fired 1.
That is all. Court is adjourned.
We were going to try her for perjury, but her grenade launcher was set to eradicate perjury.